Morning, everybody. So, stuck in traffic still. All kinds of weather, and everybody likes to drive 5 miles an hour when it rains, and so I've decided to join them. While I'm riding down the road, I'm touched by something that God clearly says to me. You know, we look at rain because we need to get to work. We look at rain because we need to have an event for our children, and so we kind of look down on when it rains. Morning, Mr. Carl. Morning, Terrence. We look down on rain. A lot of, I work in the city, so my perspective on rain sometimes bends around what I need to do in the city, which driving is one of those things, and it stinks when it rains. But then I also think of it from the perspective of I have a garden and I have animals, and rain is good. Rain is how God replenishes the earth and has things grow and brings life. So rain is a good thing. In the city, it floods the streets and all of this, and sometimes in the country, it floods homes. But it's also something that's great for, your property, for things around you. And I think sometimes we get mixed up on, what God's doing in our life because we're so focused on things that really don't matter. And one of the things that was kind of interesting for me is that I just give up on driving and stopped and went into Cracker Barrel this morning. And God gave me a word for some plumber that was sitting in front of me. And I got to give this guy a word because it was raining and I had to stop. There was no point in driving 5 miles an hour, so I just stopped. And I get to pray with this plumber in Cracker Barrel, and I got to have breakfast. But then, I started thinking Elijah was living next to a creek, and God was feeding him, and he's taking care of him, and he's doing all kinds of, stuff to where Elijah could live. Everybody else is going through famine, going through drought, they're going through issues where they were dying. But God took care of Elijah and said, just go, live next to this creek, and I got you. Well, one day the creek dries up. And I can only imagine what went through Elijah's mind is, oh man, I don't have any water, I would freak out. And then God said, all right, well, I want you to go to this widow's house, and you're going to go live with them. So he gets up and goes to this widow's house. Well, this widow's like, hey, we're about to die. There's no food, there's no water. We're about to die. So we don't have anything for you. Now think about what Elijah must be going through right now. He is seriously thinking, man, I'm following God, and I get to this house, and this woman doesn't know I'm coming, and she doesn't have anything to eat, she doesn't have anything to drink, and they're getting ready to die. Imagine what Elijah must have felt like. But later on, he ends up saving this woman's son after he dies. He ends up bringing him back to life. And what I think is really crazy is your perspective on things sometimes is twisted by what the world wants you to think of things. And it goes back to what the Bible says, that you're supposed to be full of joy all the time. You know what? I had to stop. I had to pull over and just say, you know what? I'm done sitting in traffic. And I got to pray with a plumber named Ian. And that plumber actually gave me some instruction on what to do at my house with some of my plumbing. So had I not just stopped, and then had I not listened to God and spoke to Ian, I wouldn't have learned the things I've learned, but I also wouldn't have gotten to pray with them, and I wouldn't have been able to put a word in his life that then will come to fruition later on because God gave that word to me. And that'll embolden his faith. It strengthens my faith because I got the opportunity. But had I been looking at this rain and gotten upset and frustrated, some people even pray the rain away. Maybe that's not a good idea. If you got a storm going on in your life, that's another thing to consider. Have joy in that storm. Think of the perspective of God and what he's got going on in your life. That's a pretty easy one to say, a harder one to go through. But that's what God gave me this morning, guys. Love y'all. God bless. Good to see you, Jay.